After I replaced all my dowry with fakes, my husband's family wasn't anxious, but my maid Chu Ying went mad with worry. During the famine, Chu Ying secretly sold my jewelry and dowry, donating 100,000 taels of silver to aid the disaster victims, and was praised by the people as the goddess of mercy. The emperor and empress, upon learning of this, were greatly impressed and bestowed upon her the title of virtuous princess. On my wedding day, Chu Ying knocked me unconscious and, wearing my wedding dress, took my place in the Eastern Palace. I ran to expose Chu Ying, but the crown prince accused me of being a treacherous palace maid. He ordered my legs to be broken and imprisoned me in the dungeon, where I was tortured to death. After my death, the crown prince married Chu Ying, and their union became a widely celebrated tale of a match made in heaven. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day Chu Ying made her donation. Hello, everyone, welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful stories every day. Now the story begins. A disaster has befallen from heaven, and the people are suffering greatly. His Majesty is deeply grieved and has ordered us to raise donations here to save the people. The crown prince stood on the city wall, comforting the refugees outside while issuing orders to the wealthy merchants within the city to raise donations. My maid, Chu Ying, suddenly rushed up to the city wall. Your Highness, I am willing to donate 100,000 taels of silver to aid the common people. Familiar words reached my ears, and my body trembled as I immediately realized I had been reborn. I immediately looked at the nanny my mother had left by my side. Nanny, go and move all the dowry my mother left me to my uncle's general's residence. Don't let anyone know. If anyone asks, just say it was stolen and everything was taken. Although the nanny was puzzled, she agreed and hurried back to the residence with trusted servants. Watching the nanny's retreating figure, I breathed a sigh of relief. Without the dowry, let's see how Chu Ying manages to donate those 100,000 taels of silver. Chu Ying was an orphan girl I rescued by the roadside. Feeling pity for her, I took her in as my maid. Later, a great famine struck, and refugees were everywhere. The crown prince was ordered to raise donations. Chu Ying secretly sold my jewelry and dowry, donating 100,000 taels of silver, and was praised by the people as the goddess of mercy. The emperor and empress, upon learning of this, greatly admired her and bestowed upon Chu Ying the title of virtuous princess. On the day of my wedding, Chu Ying took me by surprise, knocked me unconscious, and donned my wedding dress to enter the Eastern Palace as the bride. I ran to expose her, but the crown prince accused me of being a scheming palace maid who intended to impersonate the crown princess. He ordered his men to break my legs and threw me into the imperial prison, where I was eventually tortured to death. After my death, Chu Ying successfully took on my identity and married the crown prince, becoming the widely celebrated story of a heaven-sent marriage. Thinking of my tragic death in my past life, I clenched my fists in anger and ran up the city wall. I donate 30,000 taels of silver to aid the disaster victims. Hearing my words, the crown prince looked at me with displeasure and scolded angrily. Jiang Tang, the donation is a serious matter, don't mess around. Chu Ying also turned to look at me. Miss, I'll take care of the donation. Since you're about to marry the crown prince, it's better not to show yourself in public. I couldn't help but let out a cold laugh, my gaze icy as I looked at Chu Ying. As a subject, it is only natural that I should share the burdens of His Majesty. The crown prince abruptly pulled me down from the city wall and dragged me outside the city. Jiang Tang, you're a delicate young lady from a noble family. Do you even know how to help the disaster victims? Or are you just putting on a show to gain a good reputation? Chu Ying also chimed in. Donating is a serious matter. Miss, you really shouldn't mess around. If you insist on getting involved, then I'll have to give up on donating these 100,000 taels of silver to the people. Hearing Chu Ying's words, the crown prince instantly flew into a rage and slapped me across the face. Jiang Tang, with disaster victims everywhere outside the city, how could you be so vicious as to force Yinga to abandon the donation just out of jealousy? I'm speechless. I just said I wanted to make a donation myself. How did it turn into forcing Chu Ying to give up her donation? As soon as the crown prince spoke, I was instantly surrounded by the refugees. They grabbed me, dragged me to the ground, and kicked me. 30,000 taels of silver are nothing. If you can't afford to donate, then don't. Are you putting on this act just to get us all killed? If you can't afford to donate money yourself, that's one thing. But to stop others from donating, such malicious intent will bring you a wretched end. Someone spat at me, dressed like a respectable person, yet so cold-blooded and vicious. The Crown Prince and Chu Ying watched coldly from above as I was humiliated by the refugees. I pushed through the people in front of me with all my strength, and when I saw Chu Ying, I slapped her across the face. Chu Ying, as my maid, you should have protected your master, yet you failed. The Crown Prince immediately grew distressed and pulled Chu Ying behind him, glaring at me angrily as he raised his hand to strike me. Your Highness, would you really strike me for the sake of a maid? Aren't you afraid of being drowned in the censure of the civil officials? The prince, upon hearing my words, could only clench his fists and withdraw his hand. Jiang Tang, what you did today is the consequence of your own actions and has nothing to do with Yinga. Although Yinga is a maid, she has a righteous heart, which is 10,000 times better than your hypocritical demeanor. The refugees looked at Chu Ying with pleading in their eyes. Miss Chu, we are only willing to accept your donation. Your kindness and benevolence will be forever remembered in our hearts. Then they looked at me, glaring angrily. We would rather starve to death than accept money from a hypocrite like you. Get out of here. If we see you again, we won't let you off. You live in luxury, spending the hard-earned money of us common people. Yet you only offer 30,000 taels of silver to brush us off. People like you don't deserve to live. The Crown Prince looked at me coldly. You should go back to your boudoir and play with your embroidered pillows. Don't embarrass yourself and tarnish my reputation. With that, the Crown Prince ordered his men to forcefully escort me into the carriage and send me back to the minister's residence. After returning to the residence, I immediately called for the matron. Has everything been taken care of? The matron nodded, indicating that all my dowry had been delivered to the general's residence. With no one but my uncle aware of it, I nodded in satisfaction. 3 days later, the emperor personally inspected the fundraising efforts to stabilize public sentiment. Many people had gathered at the foot of the city wall, and I followed along in the crowd. When His Majesty arrived and saw the list of donations presented by the Crown Prince, his expression tightened. Who is Chu Ying, who donated 100,000 taels of silver? Chu Ying stepped forward. Your Majesty, it is your servant. The Crown Prince immediately raised his voice and said, Father, Yinga has had a tragic life, yet in the face of the people's suffering, she selflessly donated all her savings, 100,000 taels of silver. Such a righteous act is unmatched by anyone. The emperor also nodded in agreement. For a woman to possess such magnanimity is truly rare. If you can indeed produce 100,000 taels of silver to settle the refugees, you shall be considered a meritorious subject and I will reward you handsomely. But if you fail to produce it, it will be the crime of deceiving the sovereign, punishable by beheading. Chu Ying's expression tightened, but she quickly regained her composure. Your Majesty, I cannot immediately convert 100,000 taels of silver, but I have jewels here worth that amount. The Crown Prince immediately waved his hand, ordering the items to be brought forward. More than 100 boxes were all opened at once, dazzling with a golden brilliance that was blinding to the eyes. The chief steward of the imperial household stepped forward to inspect them, but after a few seconds, he retreated with a grave expression. Your Majesty, there is something amiss with these items. The steward glanced at the Crown Prince and Chu Ying, his brow furrowed tightly. Your Majesty, the item appears to be fake. Chu Ying's pupils dilated. Impossible. These are. The steward looked at Chu Ying with confusion. Miss Chu Ying, where did these come from? Chu Ying looked evasive. This is my savings over the years, as well as the inheritance my parents left me. The emperor, with a cold expression, ordered someone to investigate. A few seconds later, someone reported back, Your Majesty, these chests contain nothing but bronze vessels coated with a layer of gold powder. Roughly estimated, they are worth only 1,000 taels of silver. The emperor was instantly enraged. Chu Ying, how dare you? You have the audacity to deceive your sovereign. Chu Ying wept as she tried to explain. When suddenly she caught sight of me in the crowd, she rushed towards me. Jiang Tang, it was you who deliberately harmed me, wasn't it? The corners of my lips lifted slightly. Chu Ying, how dare you speak recklessly before His Majesty? Are you tired of living? Chu Ying glared at me angrily. Jiang Tang, do you dare say these things have nothing to do with you? I thought for a moment. They do, the Crown Prince immediately said eagerly upon hearing my words. Father, Yinger is innocent. It was all Jiang Tang's deliberate framing. I bowed to the Emperor. Your Majesty. These items were stored in my dowry treasury. Chu Ying is my maid. When she previously mentioned donating 100,000 taels of silver to aid the people, I sensed something was amiss. However, the Crown Prince trusted only Chu Ying and drove me away. I never expected she would steal from my dowry treasury to donate the funds. Chu Ying and the Crown Prince still wanted to explain, but they were scolded angrily by the Emperor. In the end, Chu Ying was imprisoned in the imperial dungeon and executed 3 days later, while the Crown Prince was placed under house arrest for a month for dereliction of duty. To my surprise, a week later, the Crown Prince suddenly requested permission to marry. The wedding date was set in a rush, just half a month later. I've been feeling very uneasy lately. Just after Chu Ying's death, the Crown Prince wants to marry me, and I can't shake the feeling that something is wrong. On the day of the wedding, just as I put on the wedding dress, someone suddenly appeared behind me. I trembled and looked at the person. Chu Ying, why are you here? Aren't you supposed to be dead? Chu Ying smiled, picked up the stick, and struck the back of my head. Chu Ying is dead, but I am Jiang Tang, the eldest daughter of the Jiang family. When I woke up again, I was locked up, but to my surprise, I escaped very easily. I hurried to the Eastern Palace and rushed in front of the crowd. I am Jiang Tang. That woman is my maid Chu Ying, who was executed for the crime of deceiving the Emperor. The Crown Prince stood in front of Chu Ying, glaring at me angrily. Where did this assassin come from? Daring to impersonate the Crown Princess, drag her out and behead her. Just as the guards rushed forward to seize me, I shouted in fury, my father, the former Vice Minister of the Central Secretariat, will be here soon. Chu Ying lifted her veil, revealing a face strikingly similar to mine. I shuddered. Xiao Kui, even if you look like me, you are not me after all. Besides, how could my father possibly mistake you for me? The next second, a person stepped out from the crowd. I felt a wave of relief at the sight of my father and immediately walked over to him. Father, but my father looked at me coldly and pushed me to the ground. A maid has no right to call me father. Then, father took Chu Ying's arm. My good daughter, I'm late. I was instantly stunned. Why was this happening? How could father not recognize me? Why was he treating me like this? The Crown Prince looked at me, his eyes filled with cold severity. What do you have to say for yourself now? Impersonating the Crown Princess is an unforgivable crime. Beat her to death with the staff as a warning to others. As soon as the Crown Prince gave the order, the guard struck me with a rod. I immediately fell to the ground. Was I still unable to change my fate in this lifetime? With a heart as cold as ashes, I closed my eyes. Just you dare lay a finger on my granddaughter. Suddenly, a group of people clad in armor and wielding swords rushed in as fast as they could. Those who had been attacking me with clubs were instantly kicked to the ground. I looked at the newcomers, and my eyes instantly reddened. Grandpa quickly came to my side and helped me up from the ground. Seeing the bloody wounds on my body, Grandpa's eyes instantly reddened. I fought to defend the border, risking my life to protect the country. And this is how you treat my granddaughter? Grandpa handed me over to the military doctor and walked step by step toward my father. Both Chu Ying and my father panicked and stepped back. General Zhenghua, no, father-in-law, this is all a misunderstanding. Don't do anything rash. Grandpa drew his sword and struck my father's knee heavily with it. For a moment, father fell to his knees, and grandfather kicked him in the chest, sending him flying 3 meters away. Jiang Sailu, I entrusted my daughter to you, yet you allowed your mistress to cause her death. Now you even want to replace my granddaughter with that mistress's daughter. How dare you? Grandfather then turned his gaze to the Crown Prince. You were engaged to Tanga, yet for the sake of a mistress's daughter, you framed and murdered her. Is this how you repay our general's mansion? Your Highness, the Crown Prince was also panicked, but he still did his best to shield Chu Ying behind him. General Zhenghua, as a mere subject, how dare you press the Crown Prince like this and ruin my grand wedding? What face do I have left? The grandfather turned around, pointing his sword at the Crown Prince. I hold the nation-protecting sword personally bestowed by His Majesty. If you, for the sake of a mistress's daughter, disrupt the court's order and chill the hearts of loyal ministers. Then I can slay you on the spot and report back to His Majesty afterward. Grandfather fought alongside His Majesty to conquer the realm and safeguarded the border for 30 years of peace. When His Majesty bestowed the sword upon Grandfather, he declared before all court officials that this blade could slay foreign enemies and execute both monarchs and ministers, should anyone disrupt the court's order. Grandfather had the authority to act first and report later. Grandfather's words were no joke. If the Crown Prince continued unrepentant, he truly risked being executed by Grandfather's hand. The Crown Prince was instantly terrified, his face pale, with large beads of cold sweat streaming down his forehead. General Zhengguo, don't act rashly, let's talk this through, it's all a misunderstanding. Grandfather looked at Chu Ying and took out a sword, handing it to the Crown Prince. If it's truly a misunderstanding, then the Crown Prince should execute this woman who impersonated the Crown Princess according to the law. The Crown Prince's hand trembled as he took the sword, while Chu Ying looked at him pitifully. Your Highness, please don't. At that moment, the Emperor arrived, everyone knelt down, and the Emperor immediately stepped forward to help my grandfather up. My dear Minister, why have you returned to the capital ahead of schedule? My grandfather looked at the Emperor and bowed in salute. Your Majesty, I have only one beloved daughter, whom I cherished as the apple of my eye. My daughter passed away early, leaving behind her only granddaughter. Today is her wedding day, so of course I had to rush back. But I never expected that my granddaughter would nearly lose her life on her wedding day. If Your Majesty has any grievances against me, you may simply issue an imperial decree to have me executed. I will not resist in the slightest. I only beg you to spare my granddaughter's life. The Emperor was instantly stunned. My dear Minister, why would you say such a thing? You have guarded the border for many years, with merits greater than the heavens. When I arranged the marriage between your granddaughter and the Crown Prince, it was to ensure her well-being. How could she have nearly died on her wedding day? At this moment, the military physician stepped forward. Your Majesty, Miss Jiang Tang is severely injured. If the general had arrived a moment later, we might have missed her last moments. The Emperor was instantly enraged. Jiang Tang is the Crown Princess I personally appointed. How dare someone attempt to harm her, who is so audacious? Everyone present fell silent, not daring to speak. Finally, the Emperor randomly pointed to a civil official and ordered him to explain the situation. The civil official truthfully recounted the entire incident. The Emperor's gloomy expression made everyone present hold their breath. The next second, the Emperor slapped the Crown Prince across the face. Crown Prince, you have such audacity. The Crown Princess I bestowed upon you is not to your liking, and you openly replace her. Do you want to replace me, the Emperor, as well? Why don't you take the throne yourself? The Crown Prince immediately knelt on the ground. Father, your son dares not. The Emperor kicked him, sending the Crown Prince tumbling to the ground. You don't dare. I think you dare quite a lot. At that moment, the military doctor who had been staring at Chu Ying spoke up. Your Majesty, I've discovered something rather unusual about this fake Crown Princess. The Emperor frowned. What's so special? The military doctor pondered for a moment before speaking. The face of the fake Crown Princess doesn't seem real. A flicker of panic flashed in Chu Ying's eyes as she tightly gripped the Crown Prince's sleeve. The Crown Prince immediately stepped in front of Chu Ying. What nonsense are you talking about? How can a face be fake? The grandfather glared angrily at the Crown Prince. I once encountered an ethnic minority group that possesses a special face-altering technique, capable of changing a person's appearance. I was initially curious about this technique. So I specifically asked the other party for the antidote to restore one's appearance. Just apply this liquid to the face, and the original appearance will be restored. At the Emperor's command, Chu Ying was immediately pressed to the ground, and someone was ordered to apply the liquid to her face. Soon, Chu Ying's true face was revealed before everyone. Upon seeing Chu Ying's face, the Emperor let out a cold laugh, making everyone present tremble with fear. Well done, truly well done. You've really surprised me, Crown Prince. A person I had ordered to be executed has actually appeared here impersonating the Crown Princess. The Crown Prince trembled all over. Father, I was momentarily confused. I was just too fond of Chu Ying. That's why I lost my senses. The Emperor kicked him again. How foolish, so utterly foolish. How dare you still have the face to be the crown prince? From this day on, the crown prince is confined to the Eastern Palace to reflect on his mistakes. Without my permission, he is not allowed to leave. Then he turned his gaze to Chu Ying. Take this woman who impersonated the crown princess and execute her by beating immediately. I want to watch her die today. The crown prince immediately rushed over and shielded Chu Ying. Then he looked at me. Jiang Tang, Chu Ying is your sister. Please save her. As long as you plead with His Majesty, I promise to marry you. Enduring the pain, I knelt before the Emperor. Your Majesty, I have a request to make. The Emperor looked at me and nodded. Are you going to plead for her? I shook my head. No, Your Majesty. I wish to request the cancellation of my betrothal to the Crown Prince. Grandpa also knelt down beside me. Your Majesty, this old minister has only one granddaughter, and I truly cannot bear to see her suffer such injustice. I implore Your Majesty to revoke the marriage arrangement and grant my daughter her freedom. The Emperor quickly helped his grandfather to his feet. My dear minister, please rise quickly. Today, it was the Crown Prince's fault. He has let down Lady Jiang. The Emperor had the eunuch beside him help me up. From this day forward, the marriage between Jiang Tang and the Crown Prince is annulled. The Crown Prince is unworthy of his position, having defied the imperial decree, and is hereby confined to the Eastern Palace. After speaking, the Emperor's gaze fell upon Jiang Xilu. The crime of deceiving the sovereign is unforgivable. Considering your years of service, if not for merit, at least for toil, you may resign and return to your hometown. Jiang Xilu quickly kowtowed. Thank you, Your Majesty. Chapter 6. Chu Ying was stripped of her wedding dress and pinned to the ground. The Emperor intended to execute her in front of the Crown Prince and all the civil and military officials. Grandpa looked at me with a face full of concern. Tanga, Grandpa will take you to treat your injuries. I nodded. I didn't want to see Chu Ying's tragic death either, so I turned and followed Grandpa as we left, under the care of the imperial physician and the military doctor. My injuries healed very quickly. In less than a week, I was able to get out of bed. Grandfather saw me and waved me over. Tanga, the Crown Prince is now under house arrest, and Chu Ying is already dead. If you still have feelings for the Crown Prince in your heart. Before Grandfather could finish his words, I immediately shook my head frantically. No, Grandfather, I have no feelings left for the Crown Prince. If anything, it's hatred. He nearly killed me. Grandfather stared at me for a moment, then patted my shoulder. That's my granddaughter. Good child. The Crown Prince lacks virtue and is far from a suitable match. When the time comes, I'll select 18 outstanding men for you to choose from. I couldn't help but laugh. Grandfather, I have no interest in these things right now. I want to go with you to the frontier. I've seen the splendors of the imperial city for over a decade, and I'm tired of it. I want to see the landscapes I've never laid eyes on. Grandfather chuckled. All right, once my duties are finished, I'll take you to see the magnificent scenery of the desert frontier. It's a place many never get to see in their lifetime, and a place many guard for their entire lives. After chatting with Grandfather for a while, I returned to my room. As soon as I entered the room, I saw the jade ruyi on the table. I frowned, remembering that this ruyi was once given to me by the Crown Prince. My grandfather's worry that I couldn't let go of the Crown Prince wasn't unfounded. Back then, everyone knew I admired Crown Prince Ijo. I studied music, chess, calligraphy, painting, archery, and the 6 arts for his sake, becoming the most renowned noble lady in the capital. But now, I feel utterly chilled to the bone. Was it that I misjudged him, or had I never truly seen the Crown Prince for who he was from the very beginning? I fell for the Crown Prince when I was 7 years old, following my mother into the palace to pay respects to the Empress. I couldn't bear the boredom, so while my mother was chatting with the Empress, I slipped out alone. When I reached the lakeside, I saw plump little fish and reached out to catch them, but my foot slipped, and I fell into the water. Just as I thought I was going to drown, someone suddenly pulled me out and saved me. I was surrounded by a group of young princes, all staring at me and sizing me up. There really is a mermaid in this lake. Why doesn't she have a fish tail? I looked at the man who saved me, his smile gentle under the sunlight. Maybe this fish is afraid of water. Then he crouched down and stared at me. You're such a silly little fish, aren't you? I blushed instantly, pushed them away, and ran out. Later, I found out that the person who saved me was the Crown Prince. I never saw the Crown Prince again until I returned home, but I always kept him in my heart. Later, whenever I attended banquets hosted by the royal family, I would look for his figure. Over time, everyone said I admired the Crown Prince. As time went on, I began to believe it myself. That one encounter in my childhood had indeed stirred my heart, but after all these years of interacting with him, I realized it wasn't the same feeling as before. I no longer felt the same flutter in my heart for him. A month after I recuperated at home, the Empress invited me to a palace banquet. I attended in full ceremonial dress. Suddenly, the Queen raised a toast to me, and I hurriedly returned the gesture. A few minutes later, my head felt a bit dizzy, and my body grew somewhat warm. The Queen noticed that something was off with me and suggested I go rest first. I was led to a side room, where I leaned against the bed with a growing sense of unease. Suddenly the carriage door opened, and I looked up to see the Crown Prince. I immediately became alert. "Crown Prince, what are you doing here?" The Crown Prince stared at me blankly and reached out his hand toward me. "Jiang Tang, I was previously bewitched by Chu Ying, and it was a moment of confusion that led me to hurt you. After being confined for so long, my heart is filled with regret. You've done so much for me. Yet I turned a blind eye all along." I shook off the prince's hand and stepped back a few paces. "There's no need, our engagement has been called off, and there is no longer any connection between us." But the prince grabbed me and held me tightly. "Jiang Tang, you used to follow me around all the time. Didn't you just want to marry me? I'll grant your wish now, as long as you tell the emperor that it was just a moment of impulse and you didn't really want to break off the engagement. So our marriage arrangement can remain as it was. I promise I'll treat you well from now on." I pushed the Crown Prince away, clenching my fists tightly as I struggled to hold back my anger. "Your Highness, men and women should keep their distance. I no longer have any feelings for you. Whom you marry in the future has nothing to do with me." The Crown Prince shoved me to the ground, pinned my hands, and slapped me hard across the face. "Jiang Tang, don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. No matter what, you must become my Crown Princess today. It's because of you that the Emperor has the intention of abolishing the Crown Prince. You must help me secure my position as the heir." As the Crown Prince began tearing at my clothes, I immediately panicked. "Your Highness, have you gone mad?" 1 hour later, at the palace banquet, a palace maid hurriedly ran over. "Your Majesty, Your Highness the Empress." This humble servant just passed by Lady Jiang Tang's chamber and suddenly heard some improper noises coming from inside. The Emperor immediately stood up, and the Empress followed suit. "Audacious servant, what nonsense are you spouting? Take us to see at once." The palace attendant led the Emperor and Empress toward the private box. As soon as they approached the box, they heard indecent sounds coming from inside. The Empress asked the palace maid with a cold expression, "Who exactly is in there with Lady Jiang Tang?" The palace maid lowered her head and stammered. This servant saw the Crown Prince go in. The Empress, observing the Emperor's gloomy expression, cautiously said, "Your Majesty, Lady Jiang Tang has always admired the Crown Prince. The incident last time was likely due to her momentary anger and impulsiveness when she spoke of cancelling the engagement. The Crown Prince has also been murmuring in my ear these past few days about how he has let Lady Jiang Tang down. In this situation, it would be better to arrange a new marriage between the Crown Prince and Lady Jiang Tang, so as to preserve her reputation." I emerged from behind the Emperor and Empress. "What do you mean by preserving my reputation?" I spoke out in confusion. The Queen turned around and was startled to see me. "Jiang Tang, what are you doing here?" I tilted my head and smiled at the Queen. "Your Highness, if I'm not here, where should I be?" The Queen glanced at the compartment, then looked at me. "Jiang Tang, didn't you go to the compartment to rest?" I smiled. I felt a bit dizzy. The compartment was too stuffy, so I came out to get some fresh air. Suddenly, the Queen noticed that I had changed my clothes. As if she had thought of something, "Jiang Tang, you went out for some fresh air and even changed your clothes. Did someone bully you? Tell me, I will definitely stand up for you." I looked at the Empress with an innocent expression. "Your Highness, I just accidentally fell into the lake while feeding the fish. My clothes got wet, so I changed into a new set." Immediately after, a man also appeared behind me. "Your Majesty, I can testify, after all. It was I who fished Miss Jiang Tang out of the water." Upon seeing the newcomer, The emperor immediately walked over. Imperial brother, when did you return? Why didn't you inform me? It's been years since we last met, and you've grown even more handsome. Have you come back this time to settle your marriage? Otherwise, our late father and mother in heaven will not let me rest in peace. Princey glanced at me casually. Passing by the imperial city, I came back to see my royal brother. Never expecting to accidentally rescue a mermaid who couldn't swim, my face instantly flushed, my heart raced, and as I looked at Princey, I felt a strange sense of familiarity. Princey abruptly changed the subject. If Lady Jiang Tang isn't in the private room, then who inside dared to be so unruly at the Empress's banquet? The radiant king stepped forward, raised his foot, and kicked the door open. I barely had time to see what was inside when someone suddenly covered my eyes. Don't look. It's not good for your eyes to be sullied. Immediately after, I heard the emperor's furious roar. You scoundrel, how dare you? Before the emperor could finish his words, he suddenly collapsed to the ground, causing chaos at the scene. Princey had someone escort me out of the palace, saying that today might be a bit unsettled. 3 days later, news came from the palace that the emperor was critically ill. At the same time, I investigated and learned about Princey. It turns out that it wasn't the crown prince who saved me back then, but Princey. All these years, I had mistaken the person. Princey is the emperor's full-blooded younger brother. The emperor dotes on this brother immensely. However, at the age of 17, Princey left the palace to travel and started a small business, eventually becoming the largest imperial merchant in the nation. Half of the national treasury's silver comes from his contributions. At the same time, I also figured out what happened that day. The emperor saw the crown prince prostrating himself beneath multiple men, a sight so indecent and shocking that it enraged him to the point of fury. Moreover, according to the news brought by my maternal grandfather, the emperor has already issued an edict to depose the crown prince, though it has not yet been made public. I sneered coldly. The empress and the crown prince wanted to use me as a stepping stone. But now they have only managed to break their own legs. The empress has also been imprisoned. That day, I realized I had been drugged, and there was also an aphrodisiac incense in the room. Just when I had lost all hope of rescue, Princey appeared and saved me. I rushed straight into the lake of the summer palace, and Princey held on to me to prevent me from drowning. I am not the kind of person who repays evil with kindness. Since the empress and the crown prince tried to harm me, I will surely return it tenfold. A month later, news spread of the emperor's passing, and at the same time, the deposed crown prince staged a rebellion surrounding the imperial palace. The imperial city was in chaos, and everyone was in grave danger. I sat in the courtyard, gazing at the sky. A storm is coming. Suddenly, a person jumped down from the top of the wall. Jiang Tang, have you ever thought about becoming the empress? Princey suddenly looked at me seriously and asked. I shook my head. No, I don't want to be a caged canary in the deep palace. I want to go to the borderlands, the vast desert, and fly freely. Princey suddenly laughed. Okay. 3 days later, the radiant king quelled the rebellion, holding the late emperor's edict, and established the third prince as the new emperor. My grandfather took me to request permission to return to the borderlands. As we walked out of the city gate, someone followed behind us. Jiang Tang, wait for me. I've never been to the borderlands before. I looked at Princey and laughed out loud. I thought you would become the emperor too. The late emperor left Princey with a blank decree, with only the name missing. If Princey wished, he could write his own name and ascend the throne as emperor. Princey chuckled. Being an emperor is too exhausting. I don't want that. Besides, without an empress, I definitely don't want it. I tightened the reins and charged forward. I want to see the scenery of the lone smoke rising straight in the vast desert, and the round sun setting over the long river. The second story. I once saved the life of Lu Cheng's mother, and because of that, I became the empress. In that life, I was unaware of the sorrows of an imperial couple. After rebirth, I said I would be his sister, but why in this life is he the one relentlessly pursuing me? Thank you, Miss Li, for saving my life. When I opened my eyes again, I had actually returned to the time when I first met Lu Chengza in my previous life. How would you like me to repay you, Miss Li? I was weak from the long journey, lying sickly in bed. Lu Chengza stood by my bedside, dressed in a bright yellow dragon robe. his gaze clear and gentle as he looked at me with a smile. My mind ached dully, and I remembered my past life. In that past life, I foolishly smiled at him and said I wanted to stand by his side and be his wife. He was stunned for a moment, then said okay. I was so happy at the time that I overlooked the hesitation on his face. His mother was beside me, looking at me with loving eyes. During the escape, I carried her on my back all the way from the south to the north, supporting each other through hardships. The bond between us is beyond what others can compare to. Lady Lu cherished me even more than she did Lu Chengze, since ancient times. Marriage has always been a matter of parental orders and matchmakers' words. Lu Chengze had just pacified the realm, and his throne was not yet secure. He absolutely dared not defy his mother's command, and so, we became a resentful couple. On the day I married him, I was overjoyed. Usually as restless as a monkey, I sat obediently in the bridal chamber with the veil over my head, waiting for him. Over and over, I touched the longans and lotus seeds on the bed. Thinking of the maids and eunuchs' blessings for an early birth of a noble son, Lady Lu, no, I should now address her as the Empress Dowager, carefully and solemnly placed the phoenix hairpin in my hair, her eyes brimming with tears, saying, "My child, you have finally overcome hardship and found happiness, but we were both mistaken." That night, Lu Chengze, heavily drunk, casually lifted my veil. His breath, heavy with the scent of alcohol, brushed against my neck. We did not drink the nuptial wine, nor did we perform the ceremonial rites. I still deceived myself, thinking that he was just drunk and had forgotten all these tedious formalities. Then he held me, saying over and over, "I'm sorry, Ting Yang." I could no longer deceive myself. It turns out that during the more than 10 years when Lady Lu and I were absent, Lu Chengze already had a beauty by his side. She was a heroic female general named by Ting Yang, who had campaigned north and south with Lu Chengze and held great prestige in the army, which is why the military officials at court did not like me. If I had known earlier, I would never have broken them apart and played the villain. Unfortunately, there are no what ifs. In the days after our marriage, Lu Chengze treated me with extreme coldness. In front of Madame Lu, he could still smile and chat with me, holding my hand, pretending to be a harmonious couple, but once we left Sinying Palace, he would avoid me like the plague, keeping his distance as if I were something filthy. I also tried to please him. When he was reviewing memorials in the imperial study, I brought him soup to warm his stomach and refresh his mind. When he had a high fever and was drowsy, I took care of him without undressing, coaxing him with candied fruits to drink the medicinal broth. The clothes he wore next to his skin were made by the Imperial Wardrobe Bureau, to make him look imposing. They often used stiff fabrics. I noticed faint red marks on his shoulders from the chafing, so I selected soft silk fabric myself and made undergarments for him. Perhaps as time passed, he gradually became less resistant to me, and we even shared some warm moments together. He would also cling to me when he was sick, like a little puppy craving to have his head patted, listening to me tell stories about fleeing with the Empress Dowager. Then slowly falling asleep to the sound of my gentle whispers. His breathing was always very light, and when he slept, he would curl up and press close to me, desperately leaning in. Men have higher body temperatures, and he often woke me with his warmth. He also came to my palace more and more frequently, having dinner with me. No matter how late he worked on official documents, I always stayed in the bedchamber with him, leaving a warm yellow lamp on for him. The Empress Dowager loved children and often summoned the 3- or 4-year-old children of meritorious officials to the palace to ease her loneliness. The children played in the imperial garden, and after Lu Chengze and I finished our lunch, as we passed by, he heard the children's laughter and told me to quickly bear him a child. I soon became pregnant, suffering from severe morning sickness. The Empress Dowager, showing compassion, ordered the imperial physicians to take meticulous care of me and often visited my palace herself. Lu Chengze, upon hearing this news, had tears glistening in his eyes, nearly losing his composure in front of the imperial physician. The joy in his eyes could not be feigned. At that time, Bai Tingyang was fighting on the frontier. While I couldn't help but feel my heart flutter at Lu Chengze's closeness, I also felt that these happy moments were stolen and would one day have to be returned. My worries were not unfounded. Perhaps because I had suffered too much in my youth, my body was severely weakened, making it difficult to keep the child. I repeatedly experienced bleeding, and the imperial physician exhausted all efforts to help me preserve the pregnancy. It was all my own fault for being so careless. I slipped and fell to the ground, and when I reached out to touch, my hand was covered in red. My consciousness was hazy and confused as Lu Chengze picked me up, urgently ordering someone to summon the imperial physician. Yet the imperial physician was at a loss. At that time, Bai Tingyang had fallen into an enemy ambush, suffered severe injuries, and was sent back to the capital, urgently in need of coagulating grass. This pregnancy of mine was certainly doomed, but with the heavy bleeding below, if I wanted to save my life, I also needed coagulating grass. Blood-clotting herb is a precious medicinal ingredient. Searching through the entire imperial hospital, there is only enough for one person's dose. Dazedly, I opened my eyes and wanted to tell the imperial physician to give it to Bai Tingyang. She is a general fighting for the common people, while I am merely an empress living off the people's taxes. She is more deserving of survival than I am. I, too, came from a time of chaos, having struggled among the displaced masses, and I understand the suffering of the common people. Before I could speak, I heard Lu Chengze standing by my bedside. His voice seemed strained, yet he was unusually resolute. "Take it to General Bai," he said. There was no need for me to offer it up modestly. He had already given up on my life. Tears welled up in my eyes. The smell of blood in the room grew heavier. The imperial physician, fearing it might harm the emperor's health, wanted to ask Lu Chengze to leave, but Lu Chengze insisted on standing by my bedside, watching me struggle weakly, and wiping the dense sweat from my forehead. Due to excessive blood loss, my mind was already unclear. Hazily, I heard the Empress Dowager arguing with Lu Chengze, and in her hysteria, she slapped him across the face. Lu Chengze stood motionless in place, silent as a statue. It turns out we are both pitiful souls. I was fortunate to survive, but after this ordeal, I can no longer conceive in this lifetime. When I woke up, it was already late at night. The Empress Dowager sat by my bedside, keeping vigil over me through the night. Lu Chengze stood by the window, his eyes bloodshot from exhaustion. I pulled the sheet up to cover my face, suddenly not wanting to see Lu Chengze. After the Empress Dowager drove Lu Chengze out, I finally broke down sobbing in her arms. Lu Chengze stood outside the door the whole time, listening to my heart-wrenching cries. After that, my heart turned to ashes, and I gradually drifted apart from Lu Chengze. The Empress had no son, and the court officials began to grow restless. Lu Chengze had just established the nation, his foundation still unstable. To silence the murmuring crowd, he took two noble young ladies into the palace. One of them bore a striking resemblance to General Bai. I sat alone in the palace, laughing coldly. What, after all, is the depth of a man's affection? I submitted a memorial to the emperor, requesting the abolition of my position as empress. Your humble consort has borne no son, violating the 7 grounds for divorce, and has brought shame upon our ancestors. I wrote. The wording was not elegant, but it was the best I could do. I was never a well-read lady from a noble family to begin with. Lu Chengze rejected me, and from then on I became even more reclusive, devoting myself solely to serving the Empress Dowager, sharing a deep mother-daughter bond with her. 3 years later, the Empress Dowager passed away peacefully in her sleep. Upon learning the news, I plunged the phoenix hairpin she had once placed in my hair into my chest, for there was nothing left in this world to hold me to it. My soul began to drift, growing lighter and lighter. I watched Lu Chengze weep in utter despair, but my heart remained utterly unmoved. If there is an afterlife, I would still wish to serve the Empress Dowager, to be her carefree daughter in her compassionate embrace. But I and Lu Chengze, our fate has ended here, and I wish to never have any entanglement with him for all eternity. Miss Li, how would you like to be repaid? Seeing that I was lost in thought for a long time, Lu Chengze asked again. His gentle eyes and smile, tinged with a hint of lingering affection, once captivated me the most. Yet after all that has passed, I now feel the urge to retreat. Please speak directly of what you desire, Lu Chengze asked once more. Whether it be 10,000 taels of gold or a fiefdom spanning 1,000 miles, I, Lu, will do my utmost to repay this debt of gratitude. He was a filial son, who left Lady Lu at a young age to study in the north with his page when he was only 8 or 9 years old. Perhaps because of this, He held the bond between mother and son in especially high regard. "Good child, speak your mind," Lady Lu said, looking at me with a face full of maternal affection. I recalled my past life. When she was on her deathbed and had a moment of clarity, she touched my forehead and said, "If there is a next life, don't marry my son. It's all my fault for letting you suffer so much. If there is a next life, be my daughter instead. Let me spoil you with endless love, raise you as a young lady who never has to lift a finger, and live a life free from sorrow," she said. I know she deeply regrets marrying me off to Lu Chengze, yet she is helpless. In this life, she reached out to me again. I clung to her hand and nestled into her embrace. "I do not covet mountains of gold, nor do I desire vast territories." My eyes suddenly welled up with tears. "I only wish to serve by your side forever, even as a lowly maid or a humble cleaning servant, as long as I can stay with you." A flicker of emotion passed through Lu Chengze's eyes. He had been away from home since he was 8 or 9 years old, although Lady Lu often missed him and sent him food and clothes. He was never by his mother's side. In his previous life, he had always been respectful but not particularly close to the Empress Dowager. Every time he saw me nestling in the Empress Dowager's arms basking in the sun, a trace of loneliness always flickered in his eyes. Later, the Empress Dowager was angered by his decision to abandon the child in my womb. She began to practice vegetarianism and chant Buddhist scriptures, saying that he had too many lives on his hands and carried a heavy scent of blood, forbidding him from entering the Sinning Palace. Lu Chengze would always linger outside the Empress Dowager's door, but he never dared to enter. Later, the Empress Dowager passed away, and I quietly prepared her for burial. While outside the palace, Lu Chengze's heartbroken sobs could be heard. In their previous life, their bond as mother and son was ultimately too shallow. "You shall be my daughter. Even during our escape, I wanted to say that you are just like the daughter I've always dreamed of." The Empress Dowager took the medicine bowl, blew on it to cool it down, and fed it to me spoonful by spoonful. Lu Chengze's figure wavered for a moment. Something in his mind was screaming. No, something was wrong. He tried to grasp the fleeting glimpses of memory, as if hearing a bright-eyed girl say cheerfully, "I want to marry you and be your wife, taking care of your mother for a lifetime." That person's figure overlapped with mine. Lu Chengze shook his head, dispelling these illusions. Unable to defy his mother's command, whether Lu Chengze was willing or not, he ultimately acknowledged me as his cheap sister who came halfway. Lu Chengze had just quelled the rebellion and unified the realm, but the national treasury was depleted, urgently requiring rest and recuperation. In my previous life, for this very reason, the founding ceremony and our wedding were held on the same day. He held my hand and walked through the long palace, while the heavy headdress I wore nearly bent me over. General Bai, as a court official, knelt down with the civil and military officials to witness the ceremony. The wind was strong that day, nearly lifting my bridal veil. Bai Tingyang coughed, and the person holding my hand beside me quickly turned to look at her. Under the veil, my eyes were filled with shades of deep and light red. "General Bai, please be seated." Lu Chengze, disregarding etiquette, had a eunuch bring a chair for Bai Tingyang. He frequently ordered the servants, at one moment having them bring her hot tea, at another telling her she need not kneel. As the queen of the nation, I was utterly and thoroughly overlooked by him. Perhaps from that moment on, I had already begun to lose hope in him. In this life's founding ceremony, I didn't have to follow those tedious formalities, nor did I need to cover my face with anything. The Empress Dowager kept me by her side, publicly declaring me to be the Emperor's biological sister. Just like that, I became the founding princess. Strange, even though it was still a windy day, Bai Tingyang didn't cough once, and properly followed the officials in performing the 3 kneelings and 9 prostrations. In this life, I still stand by his side, just in a different way. The Empress Dowager, who loves liveliness the most and dislikes the loneliness of the deep palace, summoned the newly titled wives of several meritorious officials to the palace to admire the flowers. In truth, they were all old acquaintances from my past life. In my past life, the Empress Dowager would tirelessly recount, time and again, how I never abandoned her when her family faced a sudden catastrophe, carrying her on my back as we fled from the south to the north. At that time, she was still Lady Lu. I was born without knowing my parents, grew up relying on the kindness of many households, and it wasn't until I was 12 or 13, after signing a contract of indenture, that I finally settled down. Upon entering the Lu residence, the lady took a liking to my cleverness, kept me by her side, increased my monthly allowance, and made me her chief maid. Later, when war broke out in Zuzhu, countless people fled as refugees. The Lu family, with its vast wealth and property, became a target for many. Master Lu was assassinated, and the family's assets were looted clean. Lady Lu was so overwhelmed with anger that she fainted. When she woke up, the servants in the mansion had all fled, and only I remained by her side. It seemed as though she had aged 10 years overnight. She looked at me with compassionate and pitying eyes and said, "Go, child. Why are you so foolish? Everyone else knew to run away. Why are you still clinging to a burden like me?" Tears streamed down her aged face, and my own eyes welled up with moisture. I took out all the monthly allowances I had saved over the years and said, "You have been so kind to me, madam. In my heart, you are like a mother to me." Far from a burden, I must carry her on my back, escape from Zuzhu, and head north all the way to the capital to seek refuge with the only remaining heir of the Lu family, Lu Chengze. Mrs. Lu stroked my fuzzy head and sighed over and over, saying I was far too foolish. Two women in a time of chaos encountered countless hardships along the way, too many to recount. I smeared my face pitch black with ashes from the stove and carried Mrs. Lu on my back, following the tide of refugees. It was the dead of winter, and many of the refugee children were still barefoot, their clothes barely covering their bodies. Many people would suddenly collapse to the ground while walking and never get up again. Perhaps they froze to death, or perhaps they fainted from hunger. In any case, no one paid much attention. In the face of constant threats of death, we had all grown numb. At night, Lady Lu and I would huddle together, clinging to each other for warmth. We had brushed with death countless times. There was once a refugee who, after long-term repression, suddenly went mad and attacked people, injuring and killing more than a dozen. The ground was a mess, with the fallen lying bruised and battered, dying with deep resentment. I desperately protected Lady Lu and took several punches from him. That night, when Lady Lu removed my clothes to check, a large bruise had already formed on my waist. There were also times when we had nothing to eat, with locust plagues and war. Everywhere we went, even the tree bark had been stripped bare by the refugees, leaving the land barren like a lifeless city. After enduring countless hardships, by the time we reached Chang'an, I had not eaten for 3 days and was so weak I nearly collapsed to the ground. Lu Chengze happened to ride by at that moment. Lady Lu, with her sharp eyes, called out, "My son." Her voice was piercing, yet tinged with a glimmer of hope. Lu Chengze turned his head abruptly, looking down at us from atop his tall steed. That one glance was peerless in its elegance. Every time I heard these noble ladies drench their handkerchiefs with tears, they would repeatedly praise me as a good child. Perhaps because I was gentle, well-mannered, and thoughtful in my actions, when civil and military officials condemned me for being childless and demanded my removal as empress, these usually most conservative and strictly virtuous noble ladies all stood by my side. It had been a long time since I last saw them, and my eyes grew slightly moist. The Empress Dowager beckoned to me, and as I approached, they each bowed to me, addressing me not as the Empress from my past life, but as Your Highness, the Princess. Several elderly ladies gathered together. Though all were noble women of high status, they couldn't avoid gossiping about domestic affairs. Lady Zhao mentioned having conflicts with her daughter-in-law. Lady Liu's daughter, still unmarried, was beginning to yearn for romance, and Lady Wang's eldest and second daughters-in-law were vying for control of the household. I sat nearby, listening with a smile. You all became grandmothers early, enjoying the pleasures of grandchildren at home, yet the Emperor's palace remains empty, without a single child. The Empress Dowager sighed softly, lifting her teacup. In my previous life, because I stayed by Lu Chengze's side, she never had such thoughts. Now that Lu Chengze has no one by his side, the Empress Dowager is also anxious about it. Madame Wang's eyes darted around as she said, "There is a ready-made good marriage right now, but I don't know if you would be willing to make it happen." Madame Wang's son is a military general, loyal to Lu Chengze, having followed him in campaigns to the south and north, and has contributed greatly to pacifying the realm. Therefore, She also knows some inside information. Back in the day, His Majesty shared meals and quarters with General Bai in the military camp, and all the soldiers witnessed it. They all said they were a match made in heaven. Oh my, it goes beyond that. When His Majesty encountered assassins, General Bai took a blade for him without hesitation. His Majesty has always shown General Bai a favor beyond compare. Your Majesty the Empress Dowager, you must stand up for them. The noble ladies were chattering away when Lu Chengze had already brought Bai Tingyang to stand behind us. Caught gossiping behind someone's back, everyone rose to bow with awkward expressions on their faces. I share only a brotherly bond with General Bai, not a romantic one. Lu Chengze said with a composed expression. He looked at me with intense eyes, as if trying to explain, but given our current status, there was no need for explanations anymore. Bai Tingyang stood quietly behind him. The noble ladies were at a loss for words, and for a moment, we fell into silence. Mother is so biased, I said with a pout. Why are you only thinking of the Crown Prince's marriage and not finding a suitable husband for your daughter? Everyone clapped and laughed together. Lu Chengze's expression was inscrutable, while General Bai remained composed behind him. They looked like a perfect match. The Empress Dowager adjusted my robe for me, scolding me with a laugh that I was like water that couldn't be kept, destined to be poured out sooner or later. Lady Gu's eyes sparkled as she smiled at me, saying, "My family happens to have a wayward son who defies both heaven and earth, angering me so much I'd rather not keep him. I might as well give him to the princess." The Gu family was an old aristocratic clan, with generations of officials and immense wealth, yet they were remarkably free from blind loyalty and stubborn conservatism. When Li Chengze raised an army in rebellion, the eldest son of the Gu family took the lead in supporting him. Picking the right side allowed them to stand firm and even gain the reputation of being meritorious officials. The eldest son of the Gu family is the dream lover of half the young maidens in the capital, while the second son remains rather obscure. If not for Lady Gu bringing him up today, everyone would likely have forgotten about him. Yet I clearly remember, in my past life, after Lu Chengze gave the coagulating blood herb to Bai Tingyang, not a single civil or military official raised an objection. They tacitly agreed that my life was less precious than Bai Tingyang's, and thus I was naturally meant to be sacrificed. Sitting in the position of empress, I am well aware of the responsibilities I must bear, but when I was abandoned without hesitation, I still felt heartbroken and aggrieved, still found it hard to accept. After all, voluntarily giving something up and being cast aside by others are two entirely different states of mind. At that time, only the Empress Dowager and the second son of the Gu family spoke up for me. He wrote a playful, satirical poem that was looked down upon by scholars and literati, but because it was catchy, it won the favor of children and spread by word of mouth in the capital, bitingly mocking Lu Chengze as a heartless man who abandoned his wife and child. In truth, Lu Chengze could hardly be called heartless, because his heart was never with me in the first place, but I always held a sense of gratitude toward those who stood up for me. In my previous life, I lived secluded in the deep palace, withdrawn from the world, and never had the chance to meet him. In this life, Lady Gu brought it up herself, and I became somewhat curious about the unruly youngest son she mentioned. "All right," I said. "I've been quite bored lately and could use someone to keep me company. See, this is one of the perks of being a princess. In my past life, I smiled without showing my teeth, every word and action striving to strictly adhere to feminine virtues, fearing that others would find fault with my etiquette and accuse me of being unworthy of being the empress. But now, I am the youngest daughter under the Empress Dowager's care, a princess spoiled by favor, where unruly words and actions are seen as a kind of innocent charm." Lady Gu took my words seriously and responded eagerly in agreement. No one noticed that Lu Chengze's figure swayed unsteadily before he finally collapsed sideways. He was submerged in the sea of time, memories from his past life surging forth. In those memories, someone smiled gently at him and reached out a hand. He remembered this person. She was his sister, his mother's savior. But in those ancient memories, they stood side by side, unmistakably a married couple. "It's all my fault. I didn't even notice that His Majesty was unwell." The Empress Dowager stayed by Lu Chengze's bedside, filled with self-reproach. How could she not feel heartache? that was the son she had carried for 10 months and given birth to. The imperial physician has already examined him and said that His Majesty is in the prime of his life. He will be fine once he gets some rest. I handed a bowl of ginseng soup to the Empress Dowager and urged her to set her mind at ease. Lu Cheng's eyebrows trembled slightly, but he did not open his eyes. He was too attached to this warmth, the rare warmth that had been so scarce in his life. He was born without siblings, with all the hopes of his parents and grandparents resting on his shoulders, nearly crushing him under the weight. Although his family was well off, his ties to his hometown were weak. At the age of 8 or 9, he left home and traveled thousands of miles to the capital to study, eagerly awaiting letters from his parents, searching for traces of love and care in their sparse words. Living in a foreign land, he was utterly alone, with only his shadow for company. Later, when the world fell into chaos and the people suffered, he fought his way through the turmoil, and gradually, more people gathered around him. He once sent troops south to his hometown to search for his parents and relatives, only to find the once prosperous Lu Manor deserted and in ruins. His last shred of longing for his hometown was shattered from then on. They were all heroes and warriors, able to laugh, joke, and argue like friends, and fight side by side like brothers. But in the dead of night, no one could hear the loneliness deep within his heart. There was one person, however, who was a little different. She was a female general, with a heroic spirit in her eyes, exceptionally skilled with a spear. Delivering fatal blows with every strike when killing, she saved him from a group of assassins, but in doing so, she injured her body and was left with a chronic illness, coughing incessantly on every overcast or rainy day. He was deeply grateful and remembered her kindness. Later, as he rode his horse through the bustling market, he faintly heard the familiar voice of his mother, calling out to him just as she did in his childhood. He turned back and saw Li Jingyun's smiling face. Though her face was dusty and her clothes were grey, he could hear the sound of his own heartbeat. It turned out that this thin, small girl had carried her mother on her back for thousands of miles through the chaos of the world. Finally finding him, when he asked her what reward she wanted, she didn't hesitate in the slightest, saying she wished to offer herself in marriage. He felt shy, yet a secret joy welled up inside him. In a place with no one around, he clenched his sleeve nervously. Not knowing what to do, the loneliness in his heart was screaming wildly. From now on, he would no longer be alone. The coronation ceremony took place on an overcast day. He led his bride through the deep palace halls. The person beside him held his hand quietly, as if he were her only anchor. But on that day, Bai Tingyun's old illness flared up again, and she coughed incessantly. After all, she was his savior, so he couldn't help but show extra concern. His bride beside him stiffened slightly. He was too young and too clumsy back then, not knowing how to be considerate of her, unaware that he would make her feel uneasy. She waited for him in the bridal chamber. The thought of her lowered eyes and the smile she gave him made his blood boil with excitement. The comrades who once fought alongside him kept pouring him drink after drink, and amidst the clinking of glasses, they uttered those earth-shattering words, "What a pity for General Bai, who has been pining for you all these years, and even developed a chronic illness from saving you." Each of them drank heavily, as if reminiscing about the days they fought side by side, or perhaps mourning those who remained forever trapped in their memories. Bai Tingyang had already returned to his residence early to rest tonight. As his cough had not yet fully healed, his mind was in turmoil, and he drank himself into a stupor without even realizing it. Returning to the bridal chamber, he no longer had the strength to lift the bride's veil. Li Jingyun sat by the bed waiting for a long time, and finally lifted the veil herself. She called for a eunuch to bring water and gently wiped his face. It felt so comforting. He gradually fell into a deep sleep, dreaming of the moment Bai Tingyang had taken that blow for him. "I'm sorry, Tingyang," he murmured. The night was already very deep. He turned over, naturally unaware that his new bride was tossing and turning beside him. The rain gradually began to fall. Tears on the pillow and rain outside the window, separated by the pane, dripped until dawn. The next day, she appeared as usual, waking him early to go together and pay respects to his mother. And so they were married, and had a family. He no longer had to endure loneliness. For husband and wife are one. He never stopped her from coming to the imperial study. No matter how important the matters he was handling, she could enter at any time. whether to bring him soup or stand by his side grinding ink for him. As long as she was there, he was never alone. No matter how late he returned to the bedchamber, she would always leave a warm yellow lamp lit, waiting quietly for him. The candle flame gradually dimmed, and several times he caught her holding scissors, trimming the long wick. Her hair fell behind her, revealing a slender neck, gentle as jade. He inexplicably thought of this phrase. Their relationship was blossoming. So how did it eventually reach the point where they never saw each other again, even in life or death? That was when she was already carrying his child. He was overjoyed and had already ordered the imperial wardrobe to make clothes for the baby. He personally selected many soft, pale yellow fabrics, extremely fine and gentle, so as not to chafe the infant's skin. The first time I saw Li Jingyun, she was wearing a pale yellow dress. He carefully packed away the impossibly small clothes, imagining that in a few months, a tiny girl who looked just like his wife would wear these clothes and let out her first cry. He would never get to see it. Both Bai Tingyang and Li Jingyun had an accident at the same time and needed coagulating herbs. It was actually just a plain, unremarkable medicinal herb, usually kept on the high shelves and rarely used, so only a single dose was stored. When the imperial physician presented it, Lu Cheng's mind went blank for a moment. He couldn't understand why fate was so cruel to him, forcing him to choose between his loyal subject and his wife. Time gave him no chance to deliberate. He took a deep look at Li Jingyun, who was writhing in pain on the bed, unaware of life or death, and handed the clotting herb to Bai Tingyang. To repay her for taking that knife for him in the past, he felt guilty towards Li Jingyun, for husband and wife are one. If she were to pass away, he would select an outstanding child from the family, raise him to be a qualified heir, and then follow her in death. Fortunately, heaven took pity, and Li Jingyun's life was saved, but she remained trapped in the past, endlessly mourning the child she had lost and refusing to see him again. Alone, he gathered all the tiny clothes and set up a cenotaph for his unborn child. Later, he even invited a master to perform rites for the child's soul, praying for its reincarnation and a life free from the suffering of this world. The master also cast a fortune for him, saying he was born to be a solitary soul, destined to have no wife or children and to end his life alone. Later, as he looked at the tombstones of his mother, wife, and child, he found he could no longer shed tears. The master's words had come true. In this new life, his mother had not yet given up on him, and his wife was still the cheerful, smiling woman she once was. No one knew how grateful he was to the heavens. He opened his eyes and heard his wife from his past life exclaim softly, "Your Majesty is awake." Slowly, he opened his eyes and gazed at the person who had appeared in his dreams countless times. In his past life, he lived to be 40, yet only the years spent with her made him truly feel alive. Later, he had even taken the 5 minerals powder, paired with strong liquor, and in his drunken haze, it seemed as if he had returned to the bedchamber, where she was lowering her head and docilely trimming the lamp wick, then looking up to give him a faint smile. But he couldn't hold on, and in an instant, she vanished into ashes. In this lifetime, he would firmly hold on to her. Yet in this lifetime, the look in her eyes as she gazed at him held genuine worry, sorrow, and pain, but not a trace of the adoration one feels for a beloved. He had already exhausted her affection, so in this life, she was unwilling to be his wife. Lu Chengze was so enraged that he coughed up a mouthful of blood. What's going on? Didn't the imperial physician say his health was fine? The Empress Dowager was so distressed she was at a loss, frantic with worry. Mother, your son is fine. Lu Chengze looked at us, his eyes gleaming with a dark light. I'm perfectly well. Never felt better, living a second life. Everything is new, and there is still time for everything. A few days later, Lu Chengze was going to the distant suburbs for a personal farming ceremony, with the Empress Dowager and me accompanying him, followed by a grand procession of civil and military officials. Sitting in the sedan chair, I was bored and wanted to lift the curtain.
"Doesn't come near you," he said with great consideration. Under his reassurance, I took a closer look at the kitten for the first time. It was a small calico, with big round eyes staring at me, a pink and tender little nose, and it meowed at me. "You can pet it." Gu Hersong handed the little calico cat a bit closer. I carefully stroked the top of the cat's head. It was fluffy, like silk, incredibly fine and soft. At that moment, I suddenly felt a sense of release. If I kept shrinking back in the corner, refusing to open my heart because of the hurts from my past life, then this second chance at life would be meaningless, only by creating new, beautiful memories to replace the old. Painful ones. Can I truly be reborn? By the time Ji Hyersung sent me back in the evening, I was already holding the little calico cat, unable to put it down. Aren't you the one who's most afraid of cats? Even the Empress Dowager was surprised. But it's so adorable, I retorted. I'll leave this little kitten with you. Can I come to see it when I want to? Ji Hyersung asked. Sure. We smiled at each other. I saw through his little scheme, and he knew it, but he looked at me openly with clear eyes. What a cunning, yet somewhat adorable boy. Lu Chungza spoke up beside us, at the most inopportune moment. You can't keep a cat, it will scratch your hand and draw blood. Have you forgotten? My hair stood on end in an instant. That was something that happened in a past life. How does he know? Has he also been reborn? Would he try to kill me for Bai Tingyang? Although I won't get pregnant in this life, there's no guarantee he won't take preemptive action against me just to be absolutely sure. I forced a nonchalant smile at him. This little kitten wouldn't, I just know it. He would never hurt me. Yes, it would never hurt the princess. Ji Hyersung echoed my words to the Empress Dowager, as if making a promise of his own. After returning to the palace, I kept a close watch, observing whether Lu Chungza, like me, had been reborn with memories of our past life. Until I was certain, I dared not act rashly, so I stayed close to the Empress Dowager. Playing the role of a lively and considerate young daughter, Ji Hyersung often came to visit me, quietly spending time with me petting the little cat. In my palace, this kitten had grown increasingly sleek and glossy, clinging to people ever more closely. Each time he came, he would bring me something novel. Perhaps it was jewelry with a distinctly exotic flair bought from Western merchants. Or perhaps it was delicate pastries I had never tasted before. More often, it was the first orchid blooming in his courtyard, the black piece that broke the stalemate in his game of Go, or the first poem he had composed. Before I even realized it, our hearts had grown closer and closer. When he came to see me again that day, I was preparing paper money, with a stack of colorful little clothes piled beside me. It's not the Qingming festival season now, he said, somewhat puzzled. This is for paying respects to my departed loved ones, I replied, stroking the paper money thoughtfully. We found a secluded corner and burned these paper offerings for the departed, my unborn child. Today is her memorial day. In my past life, every year when this time came, my chest would tighten so much I could hardly breathe, and in moments of extreme distress, I would even cough up blood. A mother's grief for her lost child is something that cannot be truly understood unless experienced firsthand. I hope that little child can be reborn into a good family in this life and never have to suffer in this world again. No one noticed Lu Chungza's subtle gaze from afar, watching us intently. A few days later, Lu Chungza came to me on his own. Following behind him, a eunuch held up a bright yellow tray, on which lay a phoenix hairpin that I had worn for many years in my previous life. The Imperial Household Department made a hairpin for the future empress. It was crafted by 30 artisans working together, and the craftsmanship is exquisite. I wanted to show it to you, little sister. I wasn't sure if it was my imagination, but his tone seemed particularly heavy when he said little sister. In my past life, the Empress Dowager had personally placed this hairpin in my hair on my wedding day, earnestly urging me to live in harmony and happiness with my husband, and to enjoy a blissful and united life. And on her deathbed, she looked at this hairpin again and again, her eyes glistening with tears. I truly regret marrying you off to him, she said. Later, I plunged this hairpin into my own chest. So, when I saw it again, how could I not be utterly shaken to my soul? What's the point of showing me? As long as your wife likes it, that's all that matters. I thought he was being rather baffling. The wife I want is right before my eyes. Lu Chungza said unhurriedly. Before his eyes, I was the only woman. The eunuchs quietly withdrew, not daring to disturb us. What are you talking about, Imperial brother? I am your sister. How could you disregard the principles of human relations? I forced a smile. This hairpin bears a phoenix, a symbol only the mother of a nation has the honor to wear. I am utterly unworthy. Jingyun, take a look. He brought the phoenix hairpin before my eyes. Does it not look familiar? This is the hairpin you wore countless times in your past life. I thought that after all this time with Ji Hyersung, I had already forgotten those painful memories, but now, those agonizing memories surged forth, leaving me wounded all over. Stop lying to me, Jingyun. Lu Chungza, unable to bear it any longer, held the hairpin before my eyes. I saw you burning paper money for our child. Do you still remember Xiao Xiao, the nickname we gave her? because the first time I saw you, you smiled with your eyes curved like crescents, so I hoped our daughter could be like you, laughing heartily every day. Shut up, my eyes red with fury. I snapped at him. You don't deserve to mention Xiao Xiao's name, nor do you deserve to be a father. How dare you come to me with this phoenix hairpin? I questioned him. You are the murderer who killed Xiao Xiao. Lu Chengze was already in tears, sobbing uncontrollably. This child is a hurdle the two of us can never overcome. Touching it means death. I came back to find you. This is the chance heaven has given us. He seemed almost delirious. I've long ordered the imperial physicians to gather plenty of blood-clotting herbs. In this life, Xiao Xiao will surely be born safely. We will be the most harmonious couple in the world, the most loving parents to our child. These past few days, I've been dreaming of you and Xiao Xiao, you two sitting by the pond feeding the goldfish, her laughing with such innocence. I tried so hard to see Xiao Xiao's face clearly, but in an instant, she vanished. Don't you want to keep Xiao Xiao with us? Lu Chengze gripped my hand. I saw you burning things for her, in our past life. You sewed so many clothes for her stitch by stitch. Don't you want our child to wear them? I stared at him in utter disbelief. You're insane. You must be insane. How I wish Xiao Xiao could come back to life, smile at me, and softly call me mother. I thought of that unborn child, and my heart still ached. But how can you be so certain that I would be willing to rekindle our past relationship with you? I no longer love you, Your Majesty. Lu Chengze's eyes widened with fury. And I will never look back, not in this life, not in this world, not in any life to come. I didn't want to see Lu Chengze lose his composure any longer. So I walked out of the bedchamber, pushing the door open. I ran straight into Jiyu Hersong's gaze. He shifted uncomfortably, rubbing his nose, and asked me, I made some milk custard. Would you like to share it with me? All right, I sniffled, holding back my tears. Jiyu Hersong led me up a tall tree, and we sat on a branch, with half the capital's scenery spread out before us. The wind was strong, tousling my hair. Jiyu Hersong, sitting beside me, said nothing but gently smoothed it for me. We sat like that for a long time, sharing his cheese curd. Its sweetness eased some of the bitterness in my heart. It wasn't until the sky grew darker and the capital gradually lit up with lanterns that I finally began to pour my heart out to him. In truth, he had already guessed most of it even before I spoke. Heaven gave you a second chance so you could let go of the past, he said to me after a long silence. Having listened to the story of my previous life, I will seize this opportunity. My words drifted away with the wind. Perhaps I am an opportunity. He smiled at me, his eyes gleaming in the darkness. He reached out his hand to me. We are still young, with plenty of time ahead. In this lifetime, there will be no heart-wrenching cries, no deception or betrayal. We can walk a long road together. I took his hand in return.